Worldwide, the built environment is one of the single biggest contributors to carbon emissions and waste, with buildings currently responsible for around 39% of global energy-related carbon emissions, according to the World Green Building Council. Against the rising threat of the climate crisis and united international commitments to drive down carbon and waste, it's clear there's much to be done. Now, here in the UK, manufacturers in the construction sector need to play their part in cutting the carbon cost of their operations, and there has been significant progress on this front. In this episode of Building Better, we're here to dig deeper into what form this progress is taking. Specifically, we'll be focusing on what's being done across manufacturing, logistics, on-site activities, and post-use materials, taking a look at how construction suppliers and partners are taking direct action on driving down Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Now, unsure what I'm referring to? In a nutshell, Scope 1 emissions are those carbon emissions that come directly from a company's own controlled resources and operations. Scope 2, on the other hand, are indirect emissions emerging from a company's utilities and other providers. Now, there's also Scope 3, which are the wider emissions from other companies on behalf of a company, but it gets complicated given the whole supply chain, value chain nature of it, so that's a story for another episode. Today, however, we're firmly focused on construction figures taking direct action over waste and emissions. So let's begin by going into the manufacturing plant itself, seeing how building better means reducing our impact right from the start.
I'm Ian Hayes. I'm the Capital Projects Manager for Isover in Runcorn. I look after all the routine CapEx for the site. That includes all environmental, cost reduction initiatives, equipment replacement, and facilities renewals as well. So the aim for Saint-Gobain and for Isover is to ensure that we head towards carbon neutrality by 2050. We will look at reducing raw material use and loss. We have some of that through the plant. We'll also look to reduce electricity consumption, along with gas consumption in particular, because of the CO2 emissions from that, and then any diesel use, that type of thing as well. So, we have initiatives around replacing heating where we can throughout the site, lighting, obviously. We also look, as we're doing with the wet scraps recycling project, to try and stop some of the waste going to landfill as well.
Prior to 2024, we would send our wet scrap material to landfill. We decided to come up with a solution to recycle that back into the process. To do that, we take the material, we put it in a hopper. From the hopper, it will go into a shredder. And from the shredder, it goes through a chain-bay system, which runs for 60 metres all the way to our melter plant.
The wet scrap recycling scheme seeks to recycle small waste pieces of glass fibre which are produced from the process, and we capture those waste pieces in water. We'll then sieve them as part of the process, and we take that and then press the water out of it. It's still wet. It's about 30% moisture, and then we'll send that through the new wet scrap system that we've got, that will take it and put it back into process. So the scrap comes from, we use vacuum and we use high volume air, and obviously with the mat on the conveyor, we will get small pieces break away, and that's happening all the time. As I say, to stop them becoming airborne, we capture that in water, and that's where it goes off to be recycled. We chose the chain vase system so we can make the system fully automated. It's a really good, elegant system in that respect. We can then run it 24 hours a day as well, because it doesn't make a lot of noise. In terms of the impact to the product, well, you wouldn't know any different. So actually putting the wet scraps back in, get exactly the same product as they were before. There's been no noticeable difference. The challenge in the design and the installation was taking a piece of equipment, which is a chain vase system, which is generally used in the food industry, to move things like coffee beans about, and salt and stuff like that, rock salt. The challenge was adapting it for the product that we want to put through it. We had to use two systems. We felt we could use one at first, but in the end we had to use two systems to allow it to travel the 60 metres that we want to. Certainly half of that distance is on the vertical as well. So that was quite a challenge, again with the installation as well. Trying to get that equipment up and over the roof, that was quite challenging as well from a safety perspective, and from a logistical perspective as well, I guess. Our edict is that we need to work towards a more sustainable site, and this is obviously a key part in doing so. So anywhere, any opportunity for recycling, not just wet scraps, but any other material, because at some point we will look at dry scrap recycling as well, but that's for a different day. Any opportunity that we can look to recycle, we will look at the options.
As we've seen, reducing our impact isn't just about the products and materials we use, it's about how they're made. Less water, less energy, less carbon, more consciousness. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Building Better.